Well, as Europe's summer holiday season gets underway, a new European border control system is causing massive queues at some airports. The EU entry-exit system aims to strengthen border security, but in some places, it's causing hours-long delays and passengers to be left behind. Airlines and airports are demanding changes, but Brussels says the system is here to stay. DW correspondent Christine Moonbaugh reports.
Travelers are getting stuck in long queues at airports in Europe. People are even missing flights. Social media users have been posting pictures and videos of their experiences waiting for hours in lines snaking through airport terminals.
The chaos is being caused by a new border procedure the EU has introduced, the entry-exit system, or EES.
It requires all non-EU citizens entering the Schengen area to have their facial scans and fingerprints registered when they arrive and then checked when they leave.
The new system replaces passport stamping, and the digital records will be used to track when third country nationals enter and leave the Schengen zone.
But since April, when EES became fully operational, passengers have been forced to queue for long periods, sometimes outside terminal buildings, because border control facilities can't process arrivals fast enough.
In one case, more than 100 passengers missed a flight from Milan to Manchester after getting stuck at border control.
The industry body representing airports in Europe says the situation has reached a critical point.
Airports Council International says that since the full rollout of the EES in April, waiting times at border control have increased significantly, now reaching up to 5 hours during peak traffic periods. Both the big hubs in Europe as well as smaller airports serving major tourism destinations have been affected. I'm here in Belgium's busiest airport. It's a major connecting hub in Europe, and the government says that it's assigned additional police officers to staff checkpoints throughout the summer. But this airport has 8 checkpoints at the departure hall and 12 at the arrivals. So even when they're fully staffed, a surge in the number of passengers will overwhelm the system, causing long lines.
We asked the EU Commission about the chaos caused by the new border control system.
The purpose of this system is to improve the security of EU citizens while keeping travelling smooth. All efforts are being made to limit the impact on travellers from outside the EU. The Commission continues to support them and as well the aviation industry in the implementation of the new system.
But the COO of Europe's largest airline, Ryanair's Neil McMahon, said it is clear that EES is still not ready for peak summer volumes. Passengers and families should not be used as guinea pigs for a half-baked passport control system that risks creating long queues, missed flights and unnecessary stress at airports this summer.
Ryanair and other airlines have now asked the EU Commission to give member states the permission to suspend EES and revert to the passport stamping system when passenger volumes exceed operational capacity. There are even calls to suspend EES until September, after the July-August peak holiday travel season,
when European airports are expected to handle approximately 40 million more passengers than during the previous 2 months.
Greg Dickinson is a travel journalist with The Telegraph in the UK. Greg, thank you so much for joining us. How serious is the disruption caused by this new entry-exit system? Are 5-hour waits exceptional, or is this really becoming a widespread problem?
Well, it really varies across airports in the Schengen area. Look, it's worth saying that there are some where people are gliding through. The systems are working perfectly well. I flew into Dubrovnik fairly recently, and it was a pretty quick process. However, there are these cases where people are queuing for 3, 4, up to 5 hours, and that really is unacceptable. You know, there's case studies such as Milan Malpensa Airport, where more than 100 EasyJet passengers missed their flight home due to these EES checks. So it would be wrong to say that it's kind of a blanket problem across the EU, but it certainly is for some passengers causing major problems on their summer holidays.
What exactly makes the new biometric checks so much slower than the old passport stamping system?
I mean, look, when you get to the front of the queue, you're having to go through additional checks. So you're having to give a 4-fingerprint biometric stamp. They're taking a biometric check of your face. Part of the issue is that you're only supposed to be giving up your fingerprints on the first time that you're going through entry-exit system. But that's not the case. Lots of people are saying that on their second, third entry into the EU, they're having to give their fingerprint check again. And I know that that's only going to take, between 10 and 20 seconds, something like that. But even so, when you multiply that by the 185 people who are on the flight, it really does add up. And it suggests that perhaps the system isn't working quite as it's supposed to be.
Exactly. Let's look at the reasons for these delays and these difficulties, because Brussels suggests that inadequate staffing and infrastructure may be responsible for some delays. And I want to know from you, because you've, of course, looked at this very closely. Is this primarily a technological failure or a failure of national governments, of airports to prepare, of airlines, of the passengers? Where does this all converge and become such a huge problem?
I think it's difficult to point the finger. There's no single reason why this isn't working as it should be. So I think that when we're talking about the technological issues, as I've already alluded to, there is certainly a case where the systems are not joining up exactly as they should be. The fact people are having to give repeat fingerprints means that their data isn't flashing up as soon as these people get to the front of the queue. But at the same time, there is a point I do understand when the European Commission is saying airports haven't prepared properly. Quite often, I've flown into the EU quite a few times since April the 1st, when this was, since mid-April when this was formally rolled out. And at some airports, you only have one border officer, and you'll see the kiosks are all turned off as well. And you're thinking, what? There's 12 kiosks waiting to be used there, and then not working. What's going on? And there's one slightly moody person at the front who used to stamp passports, and now he's having to take these biometrics. So it's a mix of both, and it would be untrue to say it's any single person or single institution's fault that this isn't working properly.
I can definitely relate to the feeling you're describing there. Now, the rules already allow authorities to suspend biometric registration temporarily. We're looking at a huge travel volume to the EU during the summer holidays. Why has that flexibility up until now apparently not prevented these queues?
Well, as you say, so it allows airports to temporarily suspend the biometric element, but these passengers are still having to be registered on the entry-exit system. So it's not the case that people are just suddenly flying through. If you've got a 3-hour queue that's formed and someone says, oh, this doesn't look quite right, maybe we should suspend the biometrics. These people are still going to be in a queue, and they're still going to have to go through. And the border officer, indeed, is going to have to manually enter their data into the system. And it inevitably just does take longer than the previous look up and down, stamping the passport, in you go.
The EU says the system is making Europe safer. They say it has already stopped more than 44,000 people from entering. Is the added security worth the disruption passengers are experiencing?
I mean, look, let's have no doubt that if this is true, if 44,000 people have been stopped from entering when they shouldn't be able to enter the EU, then that's a good thing, and that is the system doing its job. It's quite hard to quantify, isn't it? I saw a number. I think it's something like 110 million passengers have entered the EU since this was it was rolled out in April, and even if, say, 10% of those passengers are facing 3 or 4 hour queues, it should be working properly. Even if there are people who are being prevented entry to the European Union, we've still got to say that the system has to be slicker, has to be more streamlined, and it's not really fair that passengers are enduring these lengthy queues when ultimately it's the system which, if rolled out properly, should be streamlining the process ultimately, rather than leading to these major hold-ups at airports.
The system is here to stay. Let's hope the queues are not. What's your recommendation for non-EU citizens traveling to the Schengen area this summer?
Well, it's hard because there's not a lot you can do to prepare. There's meant to be this Frontex pre-registration app, but it's only Sweden and Portugal that have introduced this. This allows you to pre-register some of your information before arriving at the airport. So all I would say is maybe build in a little bit of flexibility. Let's say you're picking up a car on arrival, or maybe don't make a vital appointment 2 hours after you've landed, because there's a fair chance you might have a long wait in the arrivals hall.
Telegraph travel journalist Greg Dickinson, thanks so much.
Thanks.
Well, Dr. Raphael Bossong specialises in cybersecurity and digital policy at the German Institute for International and Security Affairs. I asked him to explain the security case for replacing passport stamping with this electronic system.
There is a case, of course, and this agenda is anything but new. I mean, it's been trialed in the US actually ever since the early 2000s. And so the EU has long had the ambition to rival or mirror that. And then it took until, well, 2017-18 to get this agreed on in the wake of the migration crisis and also the terrorist crisis at the time. And now, well, many years down the line, we're seeing the practical effects of it. So, yes, there is a security rationale, but the practice is obviously super difficult and has already been delayed in the past. And now we see actually foreseeable trouble. I'm not surprised, let's put it this way.
OK, you make this sound like a European vanity project to be like the Americans. Was there a security case for doing it this way?
But it's not a vanity project. I mean, there are good reasons in the sense that obviously we want to catch people who have wrong identities. We want to catch people on the watch list, and biometric information helps to do that. And there is also this huge area of overstayers. I mean, people who come legitimately and then overstay their legitimate stay. And so far, with the old system of stamping, this is very hard to catch. And so the idea is, in the long term, to have a much better overview who is inside the EU and the Schengen area. So yes, there are arguments for that. But, well, it's been a project that has already been delayed, and the sort of wildly optimistic assumptions like a few months ago that this would finally now work, well, have proven wrong. So that's really the critique.
OK, so you said you weren't surprised by these long queues and the chaos. So is that a teething problem? Is this a glitch, or is the system just wrong?
Well, I mean, I'm not an IT operator on the ground, but the Schengen zone is really enormous, and the member states are also in very different positions. And lastly, this is Europe. I mean, this is a problem of Europe. There is not one unified system, and there is a backbone and infrastructure that is European, but the actual kiosks, the actual airport infrastructures, they are rather diverse. And in that sense, it's not surprising. And I think really we will need some more months to maybe a year or two to iron this out. I think eventually it will work reasonably well. Also, once people who travel regularly to the EU as third country citizens are registered, they don't have to re-enroll to the same extent as now. But yes, it will be probably something that will stay with us, not just this summer, but maybe also next or the one after that.
OK. Rollout began in October. It's been fully functional since April. Is it too early to say how well it's doing? Have these first few months of operation seen any arrests of international crime lords, or just massive queues?
Well, as I just said, I would expect at least another year or maybe two of this being bumpy. There are statistics that show, well, there have been more refusal of entry and some people on the watch list being sort of flagged, but it's not clear whether they have been arrested, what was the follow-up. And one more time, it's not to say this is all pointless. There is a reason to it. But of course, the question is proportionality. Is the delay, is the overall cost, is the overall effort worth what's being, at the end, the result? And here I'm somewhat more skeptical. So no, I'm not a sort of enemy of this new system. Eventually, all advanced, highly developed countries will have this. We see this around the world. It's a modern standard. But I'm critical that we were over-optimistic that this would, even after delays, run smoothly. So I hope the Commission will be flexible to grant more sort of delay in implementation.
How secure is the data being collected by these systems? There are concerns from rights activists. There are also concerns from security people, given that Russia is into everything that we do on the internet these days. How secure is the data being held? How vulnerable are they to cyber attack?
Well, they created a new huge biometric database, which is at an infrastructure level quite secure. There is a backup level. There is an agency which is responsible for it. But the bigger the target, of course, the more attractive it is for attackers to try whatever they can. So I wouldn't rule out that there is an attempt to steal that. We've had some related, not identical episodes in the past, also in the US, of large biometric databases being stolen. So it's possible. But I think the bigger question is that connected to this system is a much wider agenda to connect a lot of different biometric data, also in different databases, to allow security authorities to draw more connections. And again, there is a security rationale for it. There are rules for it. And yet, there is, of course, the question of function creep. And overall in border security, I think not only in Europe, everywhere, we've seen this function creep. We always say this system, and then we're fine. And then there's the next system. And we already see in the US now people asking for your IDs online and so on and so forth. So I hope this works. I hope this biometric database will be secure, but we also have to keep in mind, let's not just ask for the next system and the next system and the next system, because security actors always want more.
Okay. Thanks for talking us through that, Dr. Raphael Bossong from the German Institute for International and Security Affairs.
Welcome.